So let me ask you something. Have you ever planned a wedding shower or some sort of family get-together over email or Facebook? Or have you ever planned a date, maybe over text or some other social media app? Do you play online video games? Games like Fortnite or Overwatch, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, or, I don't know, League of Nations? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you've worked in virtual teams. A virtual team refers to a group of people who work together from different geographic locations and so have to rely on communication technologies in order to collaborate. In today's business world, virtual teams are an absolute mainstay. Thanks to the internet and an ever-shrinking global economy, we are constantly looking outside of our immediate geographic location to put together the very best teams. So when it comes to being successful in business today, virtual teams are the rule rather than the exception. That said, I'm going to just tell you, working in a virtual team is much more challenging than a traditional face-to-face or co-located team. Now, in my series on moving through the stages of the Tuckman model, I gave you a lot of tips and tricks and tools that can help you form an effective team. Now, in the case of a virtual team, all of these principles still apply. However, some we need to kind of amp up to 11. Furthermore, there are some additional things that you can do to really ensure that your virtual team is successful. And so that's what I want to go over today. I'm going to give you 5 tips that, when used properly, will help you build an effective virtual team. Now, in my own career, I've had the opportunity to work in many virtual teams, both here in the United States and around the world. I've worked on teams that included folks in Israel, India, Malaysia, China, Singapore, Ireland, Russia, and half a dozen states. And let me tell you, folks who know how to work effectively on virtual teams are among the best of the best. These are people who project managers fight to get on their teams, people who can deliver quality results no matter the time or geographic differences. You need a winning team? Well, you're looking at them right here. That's one of the beautiful things of working on virtual teams. You're not limited to the skills and resources in your own building or on your own campus. You can find them around the world. So yeah, it's pretty obvious that I'm a fan of virtual teams. But what about you? What's been your experience with virtual teams? Tell me in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so the 5 tips to building an effective virtual team. Tip number 1, meet face-to-face as often as you can, at least once, but meet early on. There's absolutely nothing more effective than a face-to-face meeting to really build team camaraderie, especially at the beginning. For example, all those pictures I was able to show you earlier, that's because we met face-to-face on a regular basis so that we could really build and maintain team cohesion and camaraderie. Now, it may not be possible for you to meet very often, that's fine, but you want to meet at least once, meeting face-to-face. And furthermore, it's best if you can do so early in the project. That way you can kind of get to know people before you really start forming and storming. Now, I'll give you an example from my own work experience. One time I was asked to manage a team that was based in Malaysia, but managed that team remotely from the US. So I'm sitting here trying to manage them. I changed my work schedule so I'm working more at night and so forth. But I've never met these folks. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I did a pretty piss-poor job. It was not a good experience for anybody. Myself, them, the organization, you name it. Well, later on, I was asked to manage them yet again, like a year later. This time I learned my lesson. I flew on out to Malaysia. I met them. We spent some time together, really got to know one another. And it was like night and day. It was like flipping a switch. I came back to the US. I managed them remotely. It was a virtual team after all. Nevertheless, this time it was much better. Things went much more smoothly. And so by meeting and building those relationships, you're able to allow those relationships to extend beyond just that one face-to-face meeting. So meet face-to-face as often as you can, at least once, but early on. Okay, tip number 2. Decide what kind of collaboration tools you're going to use. Since you're working virtually across different geographies and time zones, you're going to be doing a lot of your collaboration online, so you need to think about what online tools are you going to use. For example, you need to think about document sharing. How are you going to collaborate on and share documents? Maybe you can look at Google Drive or Dropbox, or maybe some Microsoft product. You also need to think about meetings. How are you going to meet? Are you going to just use some sort of conference call software? Are you going to Skype in? Maybe you can use WebEx so that you can share PowerPoint presentations. Also, there's communication. Are you going to rely on the phone, on text? What kind of technology are you going to use to communicate on a regular basis? And then there's project management. Are you going to use maybe Asana or Monday so that everybody knows what everybody is working on and where you are along the project schedule? There are a lot of options out there, so you want to explore them and then decide which direction you're going to go. Okay, tip number 3, over-communicate. Tip number 3, can't we make this number 1 or maybe even 0? I mean, it's really important. In all the other videos I've done on working in teams in general, I have emphasized communication over and over and over. You cannot overemphasize it. And yet, when it comes to a virtual team, you need to overemphasize it even more. Communication is absolutely key. Since you're not sitting across from one another in a conference room or in the same building, it's very difficult to really kind of keep tabs on people unless you are communicating constantly. In fact, when you really think about it, tip number 1, meet face-to-face as often as you can. Tip number 2, decide what collaboration tools you're going to use. Those are really forms of communication. How are we going to communicate? How are we going to level set? How are we going to work against expectations? And how are we going to make sure that we are all held accountable for the work we're doing? It's all about communication. And that brings me to tip number 4. Hold effective meetings, which, when you think about it, is really a form of communication. Now, knowing how to hold an effective meeting is absolutely vital to any team scenario, but it's doubly so for a virtual team. Because when you think about it, face-to-face, you can see each other, you have a rich communication environment, you can ask immediate questions, everybody's engaged, or if they're not engaged, you can see it pretty clearly. But when it comes to holding meetings online, over the phone or WebEx or some Cisco product, doesn't matter, it's much more difficult to gauge engagement among the team members. It's really easy for team members to be multitasking while they're online with you. So yes, they're attending the meeting and, kind of there, but they may not be fully engaged or participating or even paying attention. So you really want to make sure that you know how to hold effective meetings in an online environment. Now, we've talked about effective meetings in a previous video, so if you have not watched that, or if you did watch it and you want a refresher, go check that out, because all the tools and all the advice there, the tips and tricks, still apply to a virtual setting. Okay, that takes us to tip number 5, and this one is rather unique for the virtual team setting. Foster a sense of shared leadership. Now, among the many things that a leader does, one is they kind of provide a pushing function. There are many tasks that need to be accomplished in order to meet the goal, and so the leader is kind of tracking these tasks along the schedule. This means that they're spending time working with the individuals on the team, making sure that they're hitting their marks, that they're delivering on their commitments. This is a pushing function. However, a virtual team tends to work better if everybody has shared leadership. And instead of one person pushing the tasks along the schedule, everybody is pulling the work from one another. The idea is, I want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do so that you can then allow me to do what I need to do, because this person over here needs to do what they need to do, and they can't do what they need to do until I do what I need to do. Now, I know it's complicated, but the idea is everybody has the big picture view of what needs to be done. We all understand the individual tasks, who owns them, how they all interconnect, and the sequence in which they must be executed. When we have shared leadership, everybody has that level of visibility, and so we're pulling work from one another. It also means that nobody's sitting on their hands. Nobody's saying, well, I've kind of done what I've done, and I don't know what else to do until somebody tells me. And so they're passively waiting for the leader to give them a task. No, that does not work well in a virtual team. We want to make sure that everybody is anxiously engaged in the work and is pushing others to do it as well and helping along the way. The reason this is particularly important in a virtual team is because since we're not all in the building together and we're not seeing each other doing the work, and communication is a little more difficult, there's this tendency to assume that nobody's pulling their weight, that nobody's doing anything, or there's this tendency to passively wait for somebody to tell us what to do because we're just kind of off in another state or another city, and you know what, we have other things going on. We want to make sure that that sort of passive attitude does not seep its way into the team. So there you go, 5 tips for building an effective virtual team. Yes, they take some extra work. Yes, a virtual team is very challenging. But I promise you, if you learn to do this well, it will help your career in ways you cannot begin to imagine. This is the way business is done today. Learn how to do it, be a pro, and make yourself valuable to others. All right? Thanks for watching, and you have a fantastic day.